The heart of the people first culture comes from a couple of things. The first one is the ability to see people all the time, to actually see people. The second one is to listen to people and to really hear them. The third one is to meet people in the place where they are, not where you are. And the last one is to celebrate people all the time genuinely. And when this gets modeled consistently, we've seen here from the top of an organization down, it has the ability to produce something really, really magical. So without further ado, and to talk more about that personal journey, both here at MiTek and from Jack's perspective globally, I'd like to introduce our Executive Chairman, Tom Menenti.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Hold on. Interesting. When I did this in Florida in November, I made the almost fatal mistake of following Jack. Yeah, so I gave this talk, so a similar talk I gave in Florida in November, and I actually opened that talk by saying, by the way, Mark's notes, I saw them, he has like 8-point type. Mine's like 24-point type. It's huge. And I gave this talk, and I opened by saying, as Yogi Berra used to say, it feels like deja vu all over again. But now it really is, because I actually did this talk once before, so that's okay. But actually addressing a group of senior executives at a People First Leadership Conference was something that I visualized a long time ago, and Jack and I have talked about it, and I'm grateful and humbled by the opportunity again to talk about something so deeply rooted in me. I am in my 40th year with MiTek. I rose through the ranks primarily in sales and marketing positions, and I got to run my first MiTek business in 1988 in Miami, Florida. It was about a $30 million business, and it needed to be turned around. And we did that. It took a little time, but in 1989, 1990, we had a good turnaround, and I was rewarded by being transferred to the St. Louis corporate office. Trying to figure that one out, but that's out of South Florida to St. Louis. But it's just as humid here as South Florida, so it's okay. But once again, I held various positions, and in 2004, I was promoted to president of MiTek's largest business unit, MiTek USA. At the time, about a $300 million top-line business, and we grew that business profitably to more than $400 million in revenue by the end of 2007. So you can just figure out where that was headed, in 2007, and the cliff that it went off in 2008. So to put things into present-day perspective, globally, MiTek is now more than $1.5 billion in revenue, with more than 6,000 purpose partners worldwide. I looked at the census the other day, and I believe it said 6,134 purpose partners worldwide, 48 subsidiaries. We're in 93 countries on 6 continents. So it's really changed a little bit over the 40-year period that I've been hanging around. We're a Berkshire Hathaway-owned company. We've posted record earnings in the past 4 years, and in the last 5 years, we've doubled the size of the company in both revenues and operating income. And for a variety of reasons, none having to do with the recession that hit in 2008, I took a sabbatical for about 21 months, 2008, 2009. I worked in both of those years, partially, or as a consultant, or both. And in the eyes of the industry, I was going out on top. But in November of 2009, I returned to MiTek to become chairman and CEO of the parent company. We call it the enterprise. And I returned for one reason, and one reason only: to make an impact on and enrich the lives of everyone in my care. My wife and I spent a lot of time talking about it. Do I really want to go back? And it was only for that opportunity, just knowing how Berkshire Hathaway companies are run and how the CEOs are given so much autonomy. I really believed that I would have this opportunity. And it sounds lofty, but that's the reason I came back. And I would not have come out of retirement for any other opportunity. I did have some opportunities presented to me, and none of them appealed. And if you don't believe it, just ask my lovely wife, Kathy, and she'll she'll validate all that. So when I came back, I knew how I wanted my senior team to operate in terms of leadership philosophy. And in People First parlance, that's known as Logos. It's the very first thing in the leadership acrostic, LEADERSHIP. L is for Logos. But I didn't have a delivery mechanism, and I didn't have a learning system to use to bring this vision that I had to life. And then I became reacquainted with Jack Lanham. And now, I had met Jack a few times over the years. He had done some motivational presentations, primarily for our salespeople. And in January 2010, remember, I came back at the end of 2009. I literally had just landed, just gotten back from Australia, had made a 3.5 week trip to Australia to get around to businesses there. And first week back in the office, and Jack is doing a presentation for Dick Marriott, who had taken over as president of MiTek USA. And he was taking a cross-section of leaders from the company through an exercise to identify 7 core values for MiTek. And I had been attempting to come up with values and vision and mission, and in a couple of hours, Jack had accomplished what I was unable to do in my first 2 months back with the company. And I was just in awe of it. At the end of the session, Jack gave each of us a People First book, and I was so impressed with the core values session that even before reading the book, I asked Jack if he would consider being my leadership coach. And he said, yes, but, it was a but. In addition, he wanted to do something even better, and that was to take MiTek's leadership through a 12-week program to make MiTek a certified People First company. And I wasn't quite sure what that was going to be like, so I said I needed to think about it, but I told him I would read the book and we could touch base on it in a month or so. Jack doesn't do anything in a month or so. So a month later, was probably not quite a month later, in February, Jack called me unannounced on my cell phone, and we chatted for nearly 2 hours. Jack makes that easy. He's a great listener. I told him how much I enjoyed the book, and he asked if I wanted to begin the certification process, and I said, not just yet. So a month later, March rolls around, Jack calls me on the cell phone again. Once again, we talk for almost 2 hours on a variety of People First type issues and principles, and this time he made no overture about the certification process. April rolled around, Jack called me. There's a pattern going on here, as you can tell. And by November of 2011, Jack had called me at least 22 times over 22 months since January of 2010 when we had that core values session. And after that first February call, he never again asked me about starting a certification process. Nor did he ever charge me a dime for any of those phone calls, even though they were clearly leadership coaching sessions. So December of 2011, almost 2 years after the core values session, I initiated the conversation about taking the plunge and beginning the process for MiTek to become a People First certified company. So we launched the 12-week program in January of 2012, and we graduated 140 of MiTek's leaders in North America in June of that year. So we have our 5-year celebration coming up here in a month, and it was quite a celebration. And I saw transformation, not just change. I saw real transformation happening in people's lives right before my eyes. My coworkers were literally unleashing their untapped potential. Sounds like a good name for a book, Jack. And I'll plug them all, don't worry. And but becoming leaders who were starting to realize that their true purpose was for something often referred to as the greater good, which is something that's larger than themselves. And you know what? These same 140 leaders, as part of that People First process in week 4, session 4, on destiny, L-E-A-D, 4, in the session on destiny, what came up in that session was our current vision statement. We actually came up with a vision and mission statement, 140 leaders from MiTek, I didn't do it. I couldn't do it. And it had eluded me for the longest time. And our vision statement and our mission statement are perfect for us. And they came up with it. So with the graduation, I realized that our work had only just begun. As Dan Phillips reminds us, and Dan is our master trainer, he's sitting in the back of the room, we're all under construction. And Dan has trained all but one class, all but one People First leadership class, because there was a conflict and some other training that he had to do. And as they say, the show must go on, and Jack and his organization were able to provide PJ Bouchard, who's phenomenal in her own right, and she taught that class. So, but Dan has done all the other ones. That's Dan Phillips, 1L. Phillips with 1L. He gets very, very testy if you spell it with 2 L's. So that's a private joke. So he says we're all under construction. He usually wears a T-shirt, opens up his shirt, and it says under construction. So when any leaders ask me if People First is a better way to lead, I answer no. It's the only way to lead effectively, and in a way that promotes what Jack likes to call discretionary effort instead of the traditional malicious obedience that goes on in so many organizations that are high command and high control, as opposed to high touch and high trust. So way more often than not, our purpose partners here at MiTek act out of a sense of inspiration rather than motivation. And you're wondering, well, what's the difference? To me, inspiration is something that comes from within. It's something that doesn't require external stimuli, and I believe motivation does. I actually have this belief that motivation, and I'm not saying that leaders don't have good intentions, but typically motivation really is just a higher form of manipulation. So when it comes to caring for our purpose partners, caring being one of the 7 keys of trust, in the lineup of the 7 keys of trust, it's number 4. There, number 4 keeps coming up, Jack. And the motives of our leaders should never be to get more out of our people. And that's the paradox of People First. If that's the motive, let's do the People First thing, we'll get more out of our people. I'm here to tell you it will not work. It just won't work. You have to lead this way simply because it's the right way to do, the right thing to do. Conditional motives, they're always smoked out sooner or later. And as they say, you can fool the spectators, but not the players. And trust me, our folks who work for us, they're really the players. So being inclusive is a big deal to me. I don't like to leave anybody out of anything that's good. So after 140 of our leaders went through the 12-week certification training, and with not just a small dose of encouragement from my friend Jack, I knew we needed something with a shorter time span, yet would still certify individuals as People First trained leaders. Our head of what we call here Culture and People Services, typically you call that HR, Bonnie Daniels, she worked closely with Jack and with Dan and with PJ to develop a 2-day People First leadership training program it's immersion training. We just completed one. Dan just taught here on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we had 36 people in the class. Bree corrected us. It was more people than we thought, and it was phenomenal for me to just sit in the back of the room and just watch lives being transformed right before our eyes. So we developed that course, and it covers everything and more that was covered in the original 12-week certification program. And a few weeks before each class, I send a letter to all the class participants, and I request that they read the People First book. They typically get the book when they first start with MiTek. If they're new purpose partners, they get a book at the time of onboarding. If they've been here a while, they may not have the book, so we make sure they get a book. And I ask them to read the book, and I ask them to send me an email citing one thing that stood out to them in the book. And I call these emails the dialogue. They send me an email, I send an email back. And sometimes I get an email before the training, sometimes after the training. Once in a while I get one during training, but I really discourage that because Dan doesn't put up with cell phones in the class or anything like that. But since I started keeping track in 2012, the dialogue, and I had to cross it out what I had in my notes because I had a couple more just this morning. The dialogue is up to 1,512 emails. And I know I missed a few because I didn't start it right away in 2012. And I have that many emails between me and our purpose partners. And I don't, if I send one back and they say I don't count those. It's just the one they send me and the one I send back to them. And I want to read to you an email as an example of one I got not all that long ago. This is probably maybe late last year. And this purpose partner wrote, "Dear Tom, I first of all want to thank you and the entire MiTek team, because I do feel this is a team and not just a company, for putting people above profits. In this day and age, this is indeed a rare thing as companies continue to get larger and global, and so often the employees are lost in the shuffle. Myself, not being a spring chicken, have been around a long time and have worked for both large and small companies in several different arenas. And until now, my experience has always been that the larger the company, the less value they place on the individual. What a breath of fresh air MiTek has been. Quite honestly, when I first accepted the contractor position, I was hoping that I could find a place to call home, but didn't really expect to find it in such a large corporation. I couldn't have been more pleased to find out very quickly how MiTek is different. I'm going to be brutally honest at this point and tell you that while I enjoyed the book, had I read it within a few days of starting with the company, I would have taken it with a grain of salt, as I've heard this song and dance before, but it was always just expected that the employees treat one another with respect. I had never seen the practice go beyond a supervisor level until I came here. MiTek does indeed walk the talk from the top down, and that's obviously why it works here and not at other companies. Congratulations on what you've accomplished here, and I look forward to this being my home for years to come." And I know it sounds like I'm bragging on MiTek, and I'm really bragging on our purpose partners because they're phenomenal. We've trained more than 1,000 MiTek purpose partners in people first leadership. We hold 8 to 10 classes a year and have held them all over the continent. Just this year already, we've had a couple in Chesterfield. We've had one in Montreal, one in Tampa, and we've got classes coming up this summer in Denver, in Portland, Oregon, and in Wisconsin. We've also piloted a People First leadership class for our factory workforce. Again, inclusion in mind. Don't want to leave anybody out. We call it People First Frontline. And I attended the inaugural graduation in Michigan last summer, and I mean this when I say it truly was a highlight of my whole career. To be in the factory, on the factory floor, and handing out People First certificates to our workforce. With as many classes as we hold and anywhere from 25 to 50 participants in a class, we recognized the need to have class assistants for Dan. And we call them People First Champions. And we've trained more than 20 of our purpose partners from many of our subsidiaries, not just here in Chesterfield, and all over the country to be People First Champions. And they participate in the class, they captain a table, and they help the other purpose partners get through the process. People First has spread to all the businesses that we have, all locations all over the world in one form or another. In fact, I recently saw evidence of it in our operations in South Africa. Terry McGrath and I were just there last October, and they thanked me for allowing this culture to thrive in our company. We've even developed a one-day class dedicated entirely to MiTek's 7 core values, and we call it the MiTek Promise. So, friends, this is a journey. It's not a destination. It's ongoing. And in 2013, rather than slow down our People First initiatives, we decided to put the pedal to the metal, ramp it up even more, and now we're working on a master's level class that we just right now are calling Mastery. So we're working on the People First Mastery course, and Jack and Dick Marriott and I are working with Jack's Scholastic team to come up with the curriculum for that to launch in 2018 in a big way. So I'd like to close with this. In the 1960s, the original founders of MiTek's legacy companies, they couldn't do anything but make MiTek an idea-driven company. These guys were inventors. That's what they did. In the 1980s, the founder of the modern-day MiTek, he made us into a profit-driven company. And starting in 1991, my predecessor made MiTek into a customer-driven company. And at MiTek, we enjoy what Jim Collins, author of Good to Great, calls the genius of and. So we've remained an idea and profit and customer-driven company throughout our history. In a discussion really not too long ago with Dick Marriott, who's going to retire with me at the end of the year, and he was leading our biggest business unit, MiTek USA, he shared with me that he wondered when I returned to the company in 2009 what signature I was going to put on MiTek under my leadership. I think he actually said, I was wondering what your gig would be. Sounds more like Dick, right, Paul? It sounds just like. He didn't think there was anything else to add, no other ands. And I was humbled when he said, he didn't think I could top my predecessors, but then he said, in addition to being idea-driven, profit-driven, and customer-driven, he said, I'm amazed, he said, that we are now a people and values-driven company. There was something to add. And I really didn't do much of anything except, number one, get out of the way. It's amazing what our purpose partners do when I'm not there to interfere. Allow our purpose partners to be themselves. There's a CEO in town of Barry Waymiller. Some of you may know Bob Chapman. And he was a speaker at our leadership conference 3 years ago. Jack was a speaker there. And somebody asked if Bob believed in Jim Collins' concept of the bus. Got to get the right people on the bus. And inimitable Bob Chapman said, first you got to have a safe bus. Got to have a safe bus. So when I say allow our purpose partners to be themselves, you have to have a safe place for them to be themselves. And then just watch them go. You have to empower them, truly empower them. You can't pay lip service. Remember, they're the players, they're not the spectators. They know the difference. Cheer them on by reminding them to be sure to have fun. We talk about this. Be sure to have fun while going about the serious business of MiTek. And then just watch them transform right before your eyes as they tap into their deepest potential. So earlier, I said, I came back to MiTek for one reason. Anybody remember what I said? I said to make an impact on and enrich the lives of everyone in my care. And that's why it's a journey. We're still working on that. And little did I know that the greatest impact would actually be from allowing MiTek to becoming a People First certified company. But the greatest impact was how much it's enriched my and my wife Kathy's life. As one of my close Texas friends used to say, I can't say it quite, the Bronx accent doesn't cut it, but he says, you always want to leave the wood pile a little higher than the way you found it. So my challenge to you is this. Make it your burning desire to add a genuine respect for people and values to the wood stack of ideas and profits and customers, and you will see lives transform right before your eyes, impacted and enriched beyond your wildest dreams.